They say like don't meet your heroes. Sometimes people say that, but I'm curious
Yeah.
in someone that has met a lot of people's heroes. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that opinion and that when people say stuff like that?
You know what? A lot of people have been really kind to me and even cooler than I expected. I've had the few people that have been not cool, but it's very rare to be honest. I think the bigger somebody is, usually the kinder that they are. That's been my experience. It's usually like the D-list reality stars that give you a hard time. And even now, the reality stars with the internet just know that they got to play the game and be nice. When I started doing entertainment, they were a little spicier, but yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I think people are just people, and so perfectly imperfect, like if they had a bad day, that I'm sorry for that person. That's on them. I always I have to be honest, I part of my journalism and my approach to interviewing is kindness. And I know that sounds really corny, but it's true because it's a core principle of who I am. And I know that my questions come from a place of integrity. They come from a place of kindness. Even if they're probing, they come from a place of kindness because it's giving that person a fair opportunity to speak on something. And so if they're unkind to me, I can usually pretty quickly assess like my culpability in that. And as I've gotten older, I think I've gotten more practice. And so I'm probably like less culpable. At the beginning, I maybe asked some things that were out of line because I just didn't know. But now I'm like, if they're not cool, then that's on them.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and especially when it comes to those different conversations, getting more familiar with someone, those probing questions. It's like
Yeah.
it's all about how you ask them and how and the I guess also how people feel, with in the mix of the conversation, how you what answer you get from them, right? Um,
Yeah, and I try to come from a place of non-judgment always. Like
yeah.
the reason I loved interviewing Jada Pinkett Smith was I felt like the media didn't really give her a fair media run with her book. The questions were pretty like biased. You could tell people already had formed an opinion before they asked. And I've actually like always really thought Jada added a lot to culture, to feminism. And so I think I came from a different place. And I do think that that interview showcased that.
No, I love that, and I think that is such an important thing in this world now. Is like having those conversations with people that are like, people try to, I don't use the word cancel all the time, but whatever it is, like you want to say, oh,
Yeah.
this is this person's stigma, therefore I'm not even going to talk to them. But I think when people, especially like yourself, have those conversations and give people a full hour, whatever, 2 hours to speak what's on their mind and what there's on their heart, I
Yeah,
think you get to see them from a different lens, and it gives them that platform to be who we've known them to be too, right? Like who
for
we've always
sure.
appreciated.
That's the goal.
Yeah, so when you're talking to those, and then when it comes like silence and conversation, I'm always like interested how people handle those moments. Like, what makes silence tough to master in a conversation, interview, etc.
I think I finally got that in the last year or so. It took me a long time to be comfortable with silence, but I realize sometimes the less I say, the more they say. And sometimes people need a beat. It's not the first thought, it's the second thought.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so I've learned to chill and let someone talk. And I think that's when some of the most interesting things come out. And I interviewed Craig Melvin on Pretty Smart, and he's a Today Show anchor. And he said the same thing. He had the same advice. And I was like, I agree. Sometimes the most interesting things come out in silence.
No, I love that because I was watching an interview with Emma Chamberlain. I guess a lot of times when people interview her, they cut her off, even though she like can get to a point over time. And she was in an
Interesting.
interview, and somebody was like, "I'm so glad the interviewer just let her have her moment to talk," because like she always comes up with these unique things and sayings and stuff. But when you cut somebody off, even if you're trying to get that next question in, you miss those bright moments of them just like letting their brain get everything else. Like really interesting.
Interesting. I think that works in a recorded interview. If you're
True.
live, sometimes you do have to cut. Like Larry
Yeah.
King was good at cutting people off in a really in a thoughtful way.
Hmm.
So there's an art to both.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Speaking of that, like when it comes to not asking questions, like what are some questions that you look back on an interview and you're like, dang, why not ask that? Or what made me not follow up there?
Oh man, so many of those. Barbara Walters talks about that was like that plagued her after every interview. She would watch it and be like, I should have asked this. I should. It's all those questions that you don't ask that you forget to ask. Um, I have to tell you, there's always going to be a question that you don't pick up on the first time. Um, and that's just life, and that's okay. I think that the more that I've experienced in my life, the more hardship or pain that I've experienced, the more I'm able to pick up with other people because I can feel them. I
Yeah.
have like a sensitivity chip almost now. And I still miss things, but I miss a lot less. Um, I think part of that is growing up and living life, Do you feel that way?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. It's
Yeah.
just the ability to continue to just connect and get to the bottom of it. Whether I mean, even if you don't ask the question, if as long as you are, well, at least for me, because my focus is always as the interviewer to give my audience what they want to hear from different things.
Yes.
Like specifically, like with talking with you, I want to get into questions because you've done it at such a high level. So
Yeah.
like when people watch this interview, regardless, they're like, wow, I really understand how Danielle thinks about questions and how she formulates and how she creates stories, with being when you're doing journalism, it's like, what story are we telling? How do you think about those things? So I'm always
Yeah.
curious about that. If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookupapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.